Okay. So one of the things that's really, really difficult for women is they have a lot of questions about their marriages and they have no one to ask. So what I did was I gave you a form and you can fill in and Assalamu alaikum to Basima, Assalamu alaikum to Naima, Assalamu alaikum ladies. I gave you a form that you could fill out and ask questions. So today what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick 2 of those questions and answer them right now. So let me pull one of them up. And this podcast is dedicated to marriage solution and mending. And if you're not already aware, we're gonna be doing a workshop, a live workshop where I'm gonna allow you to interact with me at a deeper level than this and ask all the questions and get help and support with a community of women, but with your private questions. So if you wanna see the link below, there'll be a link, either if you're listening to the podcast or if you're watching the YouTube now, you're gonna see it to sign up for the wait list. It is starting September 28th, that's when it is, but you have to sign up now. So check out the link while I pull up the first question. Okay, so the first question I'm gonna read out is from an anonymous sister. She said, "I have a live joint family. My husband loves me a lot, and I know it, but my mom's place is always counted, and my in-laws take note of it every time I visit my parents. And they compare how much my son loves my mom more than my husband. They tell me anything negative about all this, like like I guess in a roundabout way, and he only consoles me, but doesn't talk about it to his mom and his sister because they'll make a fuss. Rest of us, all my husband takes care of us and our son in every way, it's really great, but he hesitates talking to his family about matters that upset me, and that troubles my mental health, due to which I visit my parents less, although they only live 10 minutes away. My parents miss me and my son a lot, but we visit them a lot less. Please help." So, one of the things is in-law issues is a typical thing for sisters. Many, many sisters are struggling with in-law issues. They don't know how to deal with them and to talk to their husband. I will tell you this first of all. When you're talking to in-laws, what's first important is that you and your husband are on the same page. Having this first is more than anything else. Let me know if you know what I mean in the chat. If you're not on the same page with your husband, you can both talk to the in-laws, but he might have one perspective and you the other, and you might not agree. And that's gonna create a lot of dissent. The reason you're having trouble, sister, in your heart about this issue is because mostly, um, you're out of congruence. When you believe one thing and then something else happens, your body, your mind, your soul, your mental health, it doesn't like it. For example, you believe your husband should be listening to you. You believe your husband should be considering your opinion. You believe that your in-laws should behave a certain way. You believe that you shouldn't have to have this type of pressure. But because that's not the case, and because it's not getting resolved, it's creating a lot of dissent in your church. Does that make sense? When you have that problem, what happens is it's gonna keep happening unless you resolve it. But how do you resolve it? I'm gonna give you some very, very specific advice. Okay. The first one is you're gonna have to bring things up to your husband privately that you're expecting private visits. It has to be a non-negotiable, something between you because it's very important to you. When I teach women how to find a spouse, I teach them how to have non-negotiables, but this is something that probably should have been set up at the beginning of your marriage because it's so important to you. But if you didn't already, ladies, and there's gonna be a lot of those, you didn't set them up, that's okay. What you're gonna do instead from now on is this. You're going to make sure you have, visits to your parents that are not random. They're on specific days of the week. If it's once a month, twice a month. Communicate this plan with your husband and let him know, that your in his in-laws, like your in-laws, his parents are part of the schedule too. Have maybe 2 days a month where you either go there, or 2 and 3, whatever you guys organize. But visits have to be predictable. It can't be like, we never know when it's gonna happen anymore and leave you wondering when your needs are gonna get met. So having a basic schedule, you have a calendar if it's Fridays or Saturdays. Now, if your husband's opposed to this is a whole 'nother issue. Does that make sense? Okay. That's my first piece of advice. My second piece of advice to you is address the issue indirectly with your in-laws. I know we wanna address them directly, but culturally, that might be a problem and it might not be realistic. So I want you to find, like, a neutral moment when things are calm and casually bring up that you wanna foster a great relationship on both sides of the family. You're just gonna talk about it in general. You could say something like, "I feel like it's important for our son to have strong bonds with all of his grandparents. I hope we can support him in a loving environment where everyone gets to see him and all of his new milestones as he grows. You're creating this special moment, an expectation in the family that he is a beautiful piece for everyone and everyone should experience your son. So that's the second one, if that makes sense. Let me know if these tips are helping also in the chat as I'm saying along. And if you're tuning in, you have any additional questions, definitely come in. The question we're covering right now is a sister has, if you just popped in, Assalamu alaikum, on in-laws and how to deal with in-laws when your husband is not letting you see your family as equally as his, and there's some issues with that with your children. And so the third piece of advice, going back to that, ladies, is sister, I would say engage in shared activities with in-laws. Initiate some activities that involve your in-laws and your parents together if possible. For instance, you could have both families over for a meal or a gathering, maybe like once or twice a year, so they get to know each other. Alternately, you could invite your in-laws to accompany you to visit your parents. I mean, creating this place where it isn't like taboo and something you don't talk about could really break down barriers between the families. And lastly, empower your husband to communicate effectively. He might not know how to do that. A lot of times men do not know how to talk to their mothers about uncomfortable things, and you might have to model. For example, you might help him say, I'm so grateful that our son has so much love with both sides of our family. It's wonderful to see how everyone cares for him. Teach your husband some strategies because he might want to do what you want him to do, but he doesn't know how. Does that make sense? Okay. Assalamu alaikum, ladies. I want to let you know if you've just tuned in, we have a link below to submit questions. There is a form. If you do, every week I'm going to be coming on Thursdays, 11 a.m. Then the same video live on YouTube will be going live on my podcast on Apple or Spotify, Mindful Muslim Speaks. And inshallah ta'ala, what's going to happen there, assalamu alaikum, is we're going to be having that there. So if you don't get to listen in this version, you can listen there. But this is the one where I'm going to get to talk to you live in the chat. And so if you have any questions about anything as I'm saying it, definitely on the chat. And if you're catching this in the replay and the podcast, definitely catch us on YouTube, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Times on YouTube from now on. This whole month, I'm going to cover marriage. Next month, I'm going to be covering emotional mastery. Okay. So again, last thing before I go on to the second question for today is I have a form below for a wait list. We're going to be doing a huge marriage workshop where I'm going to help you at a deeper level. It's totally free. Down below September 28th, get on the wait list to save a seat because we have like only a couple left. Okay, next, the second question is, okay, the other sister, this is a really typical one. She said, how do you handle a spouse who's not on a growth path? And now it's creating distance between you. That is really, really common. How many of you have set goals for yourself, but your husband is like not growing with you? How many of you maybe were less religious and now you wanna be more religious, but your husband is not growing with you? Let me know in the chat if any of this sounds familiar. So I'm gonna tell you exactly what you should do in this case, but I want you to know this is totally common and to be expected. Let me first tell you why it's common. It's common because men tend to focus on taking care, right? The house, the money, the job. But for us women, we tend to have a bit more flexibility, even though I know our days are full. I'm not saying you're not busy because I'm very busy, right? Alhamdulillah. I do think so, Fatima. So alhamdulillah. And so what you will find is that he doesn't focus on that, number one, because he's so busy with the money and money and money. Number two, culturally, men are not taught to do that. Women were more like in tune with our emotions. And it's not that we're more sensitive, it's just that it's something that we see a different value in. And so it's common. But here's what to do. If you want your husband to grow and you feel he's not growing with you, here's my basic top advice. And the first one might be unexpected. Okay. Create a safe and non judgmental space. If you were listening to my podcast last week, you guys might know that men do not like to open up. I did an entire podcast on how to get them to open up. So if you want that in depth, go check out our last podcast on that, the ways to get your husband to open up. It's an entire podcast in itself. But what I want you to know is having him open up It's crucial to create a safe environment. If he feels you're gonna judge him, he's not being manly, and he's not being this and that, then he's not gonna open up at all. If he feels like he's gonna say a buzzword and you're gonna jump on it, he's not gonna open up. If he feels like you're like, needy on him, like, he's not gonna open up. Does that make sense? And so what I want you to think about is the fact that whatever you're trying to do to get him to open up, your first impression to get him to do that is in your body, it's in your face. How are you listening? You're encouraging him, you're not nagging him and expecting him to do it. You're not like, "Why don't you talk to me? I never know what you're thinking." Like, don't do that approach. It doesn't work with him. So instead, you have to create this environment. Instead of directly asking him what's wrong, try this instead. "I've noticed lately you've been feeling down, and I just want you to know that I feel like when you're sad, I'm sad. Is there anything you need at all?" And you can ask him in whatever way that makes sense in your language, but basically just let him know that you love him, you see him, you care about him, you notice he's a little sad, and if anything you can do. He might not open up in that moment, but you're creating this atmosphere of, "Oh, my wife cares. Not my wife wants something from me, not my wife is nagging at me, not she's gonna force me to talk, just a genuine love." And so, first of all, having safe space and just giving him that idea that that's who you are, okay? The second one is encourage small steps. This is not happening overnight. When I first got my husband to open up, it took the first maybe 2 years. And I know that sounds like forever, but if you have him for the rest of your life, that's nothing. So I did it little at a time. At first, he wouldn't open up ever, but slowly, slowly he did. How are you going to do that? Well, you're going to start by doing these kind of like non threatening conversations where you just talk about shared interests. This will help them feel more at ease about talking about more emotional subjects. Don't go for the throat. Don't go for the emotional subjects. Just talk about stuff that you guys can like enjoy with each other. For instance, while you're spending time together, you could talk about your son's latest thing that he did or the latest thing that your daughter did. And gradually you could steer the conversation to something more personal, like, "I've been thinking a lot lately about what brings us joy as a family. I don't know. What's something that used to make you feel really happy that we used to do?" Do you get how I did that? We're talking about the kids. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, look what he's doing. Do you know the other day he was doing this?" And I'm acting like it's nothing. But all of a sudden, I'm like, "You know what? This is my segue. You know what? Lately, I've been thinking about the fact that some things we've been doing haven't been the same as before. What do you think are some of the things that we used to do together with our son that you really enjoyed?" It's kind of emotional, but it's kind of not. And it's not all about him. We're directing it to the kids or we're directing it to something else. Does that make sense? When you have enough of those, you're going to find him start to open up about other things. I see a question in the chat and I don't do like direct questions with the time, but I want to see if I can add this into what we're talking about. The sister said, "What if he is off his dean and you want to increase your learning as a new revert and he says he will, but he doesn't lead Islamically?" I'm going to be really honest. That is a huge thing reverts experience. A lot of reverts think they're marrying into a Muslim man and he's going to lead them. In fact, they want it. Now, don't get me wrong, they want their opinion too, but they think he's going to straight up lead. A lot of men don't. And again, it's not because they don't want to, it's because a lot of them haven't been modeled how to be leaders by their fathers, by their uncles. So your expectation of him, he doesn't get it and see what he needs to do. What I want you to do is I want you to start to, instead of forcing him, start to share things. What I used to do is I used to have a video open on YouTube while I was cooking and cleaning. It would be some type of subject that I want my husband to learn a bit more about. I'd play it loudly in the house and then he would indirectly hear it. I used to leave little pieces of paper with hadith in places I knew he would frequently go to open up and get his cologne or his socks. And it would be a one line and he would see it. I would just do things that I knew would touch his heart. And eventually, I would start to share ideas. Men love when you ask them for advice. So you might not want his advice, but going to him and asking him about something that is, you're not taking a ruling from him, just getting him to talk really helps. Starting to invite him into your world is what I'm really saying. You do that, be like, "Oh, I'm not good at this. Could you lead me? Could you show me? I would love that. Oh, you're so good at this." Men wanna be praised, and I know it sounds a little bit cheesy sometimes, but need to be babied into the role. And then inshallah ta'ala, you can start to express other things that you want to do with him, if that makes sense. Okay. I'm going to try to fix the audio for the next one, ladies. Thank you for letting me know. I'm working on this and it's our first one. But inshallah ta'ala, what I want you to know is, okay, can you try this one? Can you hear me now? I changed the audio just a little bit and we will work on that as well. All right. So, ladies, oh, alhamdulillah. No, you're gonna be okay, sis. I really, really think you are, and I'm really feeling that you guys understand this is something that you're not experiencing alone. The last thing I wanna tell women is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees you. He sees what you're struggling with. I want you to make sure whatever you're going through, you are going into sujood in the last third of the night before Fajr and begging for him to assist you. Never once have I done that. Never once, maybe the 30 minutes before Fajr, an hour, has Allah not helped me. Allah loves you. Allah wants your marriage to succeed, and He will help you if you're incredibly sincere and you're trying your best to do this for his sake and for the sake of your family. Never underestimate that. And you are completely capable. And every feeling that you feel is 100% valid. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. If your husband tells you those are silly feelings, you shouldn't be feeling that, you shouldn't be doing that, that is not true. Every feeling you have is valid and important. Every need you want is valid, but you have to know how to talk to him. One of the biggest things women don't know how to do is they try to talk to their husband like they talk to women. You have to learn how men listen in order to get them listen. I know we're coming to the close of our session together, but what I want to tell you is if you want to learn more about how to make him your best friend, how to get him to listen, how to increase that love and intimacy, I'm going to go a lot deeper into this inside of the free workshop I'm about to do this month. So I put the link below. If you guys want to join, more than welcome. I'm going to be doing another one of these next Tuesday. So inshallah ta'ala, if it's something you feel like could benefit, I'm going to take all your feedback and if you want to put anything else aside. And I want to say everything you all are asking on the chat, I absolutely love. You're completely right. I'm going to address one more thing before I leave. One of the sisters says he says he'll pray more, but I haven't seen him change. How can I help him? I want to talk about this one real quick because a lot of women ask me. First of all, you have to be married to a man that prays. It's very different if he doesn't pray at all and his praying is weak. So we handle them completely differently in Islam, okay? I'm just telling this because not every woman understands this. If you have a husband who absolutely doesn't pray, you really need to talk to an imam. Some scholars say that it's not even permissible to stay with him. It's very different than he has like shoddy prayer. For the sister who has a husband who prays but not consistently or well, or there's issues, what I will say is this: there should be some type of an atmosphere of in the home of togetherness on this subject. Sit down with your husband and talk to him about it, not passively, not emotionally, but seriously. I can't go into it a ton right here, but this is something very different to have a husband who doesn't pray versus prays kind of poorly. And we handle them two different ways. Again, we're going to go into tons more of these problem solutions inside the workshop and many other things, but definitely catch me down below in the wait list. And also, if you have any questions to submit for the next live, then I can pull your question. Maybe I had a bunch. I pulled two or three today. And inshallah ta'ala, I'll address that too. And I cannot wait to see you on the next podcast. This month, we're covering marriage. And in October, we'll be covering emotions. And I will see you in the next one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.